My uncle dropped his bombshell on a lazy Sunday afternoon. We've decided it's time to turn our old family barn into a luxury glamping site for your cousin, Lydia, and her boutique retreat business. You'll need to transfer the title to her LLC. I nearly choked on my iced latte. Me, 32 years old, a struggling singer-songwriter living paycheck-to-paycheck-handing over the barn I'd inherited and poured every spare dollar into. No freaking way. So I set my plan into motion. By the time they realized what I'd done, they were left speechless. Let me start at the beginning. For the past 8 years, I've moonlighted as a freelance music teacher and session guitarist, earning about $48,000 a year. It's hardly glamorous, but I love the freedom. Late-night jam sessions, touring local bars, teaching kids to read music. My rent's reasonable because I live in a converted attic over my grandfather's old garage, rent-free. In return, I keep the place in shape. Every extra dollar I make gets funneled into savings until 3 years ago, when Grandpa passed away and left me the family barn, a weathered red structure on the edge of our hometown. The barn wasn't much at first glance: peeling paint, a sagging roof, weeds growing through the floorboards. But it had character: thick oak beams, hand-hewn floor planks, a loft where Grandpa used to nap on Sunday afternoons. When he handed me the keys, I felt a surge of pride. Finally, something of my own. I scraped together every cent, hired a local carpenter to replace rafters, patched the roof, installed wiring thankfully grandfathered as agricultural structure, and even poured a concrete pad for a small studio space. I imagined turning it into a rehearsal loft, or maybe a weekend retreat for fellow musicians. It was my dream in slow motion. Meanwhile, my cousin Lydia, 34 years old, lives in Nashville, 3 kids under 7, and a marketed transformational life coach turned glamping guru had convinced our aunt and aunt's husband to bankroll her boutique retreat business. She Instagrammed images of luxury tents draped in fairy lights, yoga mats on dewy grass, brunches with artisanal pastries and matcha lattes. In real life, she'd never set foot on our family's property since Grandpa's funeral 3 years ago. She'd flown in for pictures and flown out the next day, leaving everyone else to do the heavy lifting. But according to Aunt Marjorie and Uncle Rick, she needed that barn more than I did. So last Sunday, I'd invited them to see the Progress fresh whitewash on the walls, a tiny kitchenette ready to brew espresso, the loft polished and wired for recording. I'd made my famous McCann cheese bake and lined the picnic table with mason jars of fresh lemonade. My heart swelled as I welcomed them in, proud, excited, hopeful. They walked in like they owned the place. Lydia breezed past the kitchenette, phone in hand, already live streaming. "Oh my God, you guys, look at this space. So rustic chic. Can't wait to host our first Empower and Unplug weekend retreat here." Her nails clicked as she typed captions faster than I could blink. Uncle Rick cleared his throat. "Eli," he began in that grave old business tone, "we've been reviewing Grandpa's will and the trust documents. Given Lydia's business plan and her financial backers, we think it's best to transfer the barn's title to her LLC. She convert it into a glamping site, manage bookings, handle insurance. Don't worry. You can still come back on weekends for your music." I felt the room spin. Title transfer. The barn's deed is my name. Grandpa left it to me. Aunt Marjorie patted my shoulder. "Sweetheart, the trust gives the executors the right to reassign property for the benefit of the family enterprise. Grandpa always wanted this land to bring prosperity." "Then why wasn't I consulted?" I said, keeping my voice even. Lydia shot me a sympathetic look and flicked her hair. "Oh Eli, you're so busy with your touring, you'd never get around to setting this up." She turned to Uncle Rick. "And you know how I can't resist a good property pivot." I sank onto the edge of a hay bale turned benched seat, heart pounding. Something in me snapped. All those late nights stirring paint, all the worry I'd had about funding the roof repairs, gone without so much as a phone call. So I smiled, excused myself, and retreated to my studio apartment upstairs, where I kept a binder labeled barn files. Inside that binder was everything. The original deed in my name, tax receipts for every repair, photos of the falling rafters, permits I'd pulled, invoices from the electrician who rewired the place, Even the emails confirming my donation to the local historical society fund to keep the barn eligible for preservation grants. I also had a notarized letter from the township agreeing that, since it's listed as a cultural landmark, any title change needed unanimous consent of the sole owner, me. I'd kept copies because I trusted Grandpa's wild streak might lurk somewhere in those documents. I marched downstairs, binder in hand, and laid it on the reclaimed wood table. Lydia stopped live streaming. "What's that?" she asked. "A complete record of every cent and every permit," I said, flipping to page 1. "Here are the tax statements showing that I'm the sole owner, not the trust. Here's the county clerk's notarized notice confirming the barn's landmark status requires my written approval for any transfer. And here," I held up a certificate, "is the historical preservation grant I secured under my name, which carries a covenant forbidding title changes for 20 years. Uncle Rick's face turned ashen. Lydia's lips pursed, eyed broken her frame. She tried to mask it. You can't just spring this on us." She looked for her phone, probably to fact-check me or issue a statement. "Actually," I said, "I filed a memorandum of restriction in the court records last month. It's public record. Anyone who tries to file a deed transfer will have it flagged automatically. The board will reject it." A tense silence filled the barn. The wooden beams seemed to creak in approval. Then Aunt Marjorie cleared her throat. "Well, that's thorough. But perhaps we can renegotiate usage rights. We could draft a rental agreement. Lydia can operate a weekend retreat until she recoups her investor funds." I nodded. "I'm open to a fair arrangement. 3 long weekends in spring and fall, plus 2 week-long retreats in summer and autumn. Outside those times, the space is available for me to record and rehearse, but title stays in my name, unchanged." Lydia bristled. "That's so limiting. My business model needs more flexibility." She raised her voice. "You're being unreasonable, Eli." I met her gaze. "I'm protecting my inheritance, Grandpa's legacy, and my livelihood. You've never cared about the barn, except as a photo backdrop." She gasped. "Lydia, a moment," she muttered to her phone, tapping the screen. Aunt Marjorie shot her a look. "No filming in here right now." Lydia lowered the phone, pouty. Uncle Rick cleared his throat again. "Let's put it in writing. We'll have our attorney draft an addendum to your deed specifying the schedule. Lydia, you'll cover insurance and utilities, but the barn remains Eli's property." I exhaled. "Deal." I extended my hand. Lydia stared at it, then shook it stiffly. Later, over iced tea on the picnic table, Momhood arrived, unexpectedly leaned in. "I'm proud of you," she said softly. "You stood your ground with grace." They left soon after, subdued. Lydia didn't post a thing that evening, her first Instagram silence in weeks. Aunt Marjorie and Uncle Rick fumbled with their phones, probably updating each other on strategy. As for me, I spent Monday morning polishing the floorboards, then headed into town to buy a new set of drums for the barn loft. Yesterday, I hosted an open mic night for local songwriters, 20 of us, crammed into that reclaimed space, sharing stories and strumming guitars. The sunset light filtered through the refurbished windows, and guitars echoed off those old oak beams. It felt like magic. Tonight, I'll record the first track of my new album in that very barn. A song about holding onto your roots when everyone expects you to sell them out. I might even live stream that one, though. It'll be on my terms. Sometimes, the best way to honor family is to protect what they gave you in the first place. And in that barn, with every nail hammered by my own sweat, time finally living Grandpa's legacy.